Hello, my name is Holly and I'm here today at the Baytown Nature Center to talk about invasive species and competition. An invasive species is an organism that has been introduced into a habitat that is not typically from, and it creates a negative impact. That invasive species can create a negative impact by introducing competition. Competition is the relationship between organisms where one is typically harmed due to limited resources. So what's happening is an invasive species is brought into a new area that is not normally from. It's using up those resources that other plants and animals are already using. And that creates a stress on everyone. And in fact, some invasive species can even lead to the extinction of plants and animals, native plants and animals that are from that area. They can even alter or change habitats permanently and even limit biodiversity or the variety of life you find in an area. So one example of an invasive species is the Chinese tallow tree. And we have one right here. Chinese tallow trees are from China and Japan. Now the problem with these tallow trees is how fast they grow. So one Chinese tallow tree only takes 3 years to mature, and one tree alone can produce 100,000 seeds a year. And so we have this fast growing tree that produces a lot of seeds, and because it grows so fast it creates a lot of shade. And other plants cannot grow or get enough sunlight around this tree. You may notice there's not a lot of other trees growing around this Chinese tallow tree. That's also because of the leaves from this plant. So there are toxins in the leaves of this plant, of this tree, and so that limits what's actually eating those leaves. And even the berries are hard to digest. And those leaves, once it's fall, will actually fall to the ground and decompose. So these leaves will change colors during the seasons. They will go from green to yellow, orange, maybe even red, finally fall down to the ground, decompose, and alter the soil conditions to limit the variety of plants that grow around them. Now, Chinese tallow trees only mature in 3 years. We compare that to a live oak tree that's native to Texas. That tree, that live oak tree, may take up to 75 years to mature depending on conditions. In the Houston area, about 23% of all trees are Chinese tallow trees because of how quickly they reproduce. Next thing we are going to look at is another invasive species, and that is the fire ant. So fire ants are originally from South America, but they were first discovered in the United States around the 1930s in Alabama. And so unlike the Chinese tallow tree where it was brought to the United States on purpose, red fire ants were brought to the United States on accident. This is another naturalized invasive species because they're so abundant, they're here to stay. It's really hard to permanently get rid of red fire ants. Now the reason why they're considered invasive is because of how competitive and aggressive these ants are. They have been known to run off native ants like harvester ants, and they will actually find the queen of those ants and kill off the queen. Now we can tell that this is a fire ant mound and not a harvester ant mound. If you look, it is very fluffy and rounded. Some mounds can get up to 18 inches tall, and they don't have a hole or opening at the top of that mound. They have underground tunnels to enter their ant mound, and so you're not going to see an actual opening. Now they're also causing the extinction or the threatening the populations of horned lizards. So thank you for joining me at the Baytown Nature Center, and I hope you learned a little bit about invasive species and competition.